Go. So, thank you, Amy. Recording is started. And so we'll convene the public meeting as of right now. So we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance for the special board meeting of October 2nd. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Usually we have a little recording with that, but I think that we all chimed in. That was perfect. Okay, so welcome to the meeting, the special board meeting of October 2nd. And we are going to have roll call right now.
Thank you, Ms. Tomasi. Yes, I'll be doing roll call today. Mr. Ahrens is excused. Mr. Brown?
Here.
Ms. DeVore is excused. Ms. Harvey?
Here.
Ms. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Kenyon?
Here.
Mr. Law?
Here.
Ms. Moore?
Here.
Mr. Schaefer is excused today. Mr. Smith?
Here.
Ms. Thayer is also excused. And Ms. Tomasi?
Here.
So, Madam Co-Chair, that does bring you to 8 board members on the line today, and that is quorum of the board.
Great. So we have just one action item today and a few little discussion items to go with it. So I'm going to turn this directly over to the committee chair, Mark Law. So Mark, it's all yours.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Can you hear me okay? Because sometimes I have a little problem with the Wi-Fi.
Yep, you're good.
We can hear you, Mark.
All right, thank you. It's a bit delayed, but basically, we had a situation where we got a lot of people or organizations willing to participate in the broadband, and which surprised us, which is actually quite good news. But as a result, it's going to take a little more effort, timing, and expense to vet those properly. And so I will butcher it beyond that. So I'm going to turn it over to people that know the specifics much better than myself. I hope that I prefaced that okay.
Thank you, Mr. Committee Chair. Appreciate that intro. That is accurate. One thing that may be less than accurate is my name listed as the person on each of the items on your agenda. You'll be hearing from Elena Zimpel, our broadband manager, as well as the consultants that are helping us on this work. You are correct. We've had a great response to our CPF program, which is open right now for broadband development. It is the $75 million program funded through the ARPA program. And so that is open right now. And we've had a great response to the applications, which has necessitated us coming to you to ask for additional funding authorization to continue the technical evaluation of each of those applications is going. So before I do, as you predicted for yourself, Mr. Chairman, butcher this more, I'm going to give the microphone to Elena and crew, and they'll walk you through each of the items in our. Thank you.
You'd hate it not to be 100% the time. Thank you very much, Committee Chair and board members and all. We are here to ask for an additional $250,000 for the CTC contract amendment. This is somewhat confusing as we have retained let's call it two arms of the CTC. One is to help us with the BEAD, and we released an RFP to do that, and we are working with CTC to do that. But we also, for the CPF, which is the ARPA funding, the Capital Projects Fund, we are running an application right now, as you heard, and then we retained that arm of CTC to review those applications and verify the ability of the companies to carry this out, and a number of other items that are under that. We retained CTC, and they came with an excellent recommendation from what Montana had done. We had a sense of urgency when this particular contract was signed, and we did it for $96,500 that you can see. We had experienced probably 3 to 4 times as many applications as we thought. We based our numbers upon Montana's. Ours, they had 3 times money and 1/3 of the number of applications. We came in with 116 applications, and to do the due diligence and all the things that were surrounding that needed to be done, including mapping the locations and any deduplication that went with that mapping. It used up the money much quicker than we thought that it was going to be. We thought we had until I thought I had until the next board meeting to do this, to bring this before you, because we always knew we needed more money. We just didn't know how much. And it left us in this really awkward position of just having a board meeting and now coming back and having to have another. So my apologies for that, not seeing into the future. Here, Committee Chairman Law, I don't know what you want to do. I have on the phone Joanne Hovis, who is the principal for CTC, to talk about what this arm of CTC is doing for us. Would you like to hear from her before you take the vote as a board?
Thank you, Elena. I think that I would just query the board members that are on if they wanted additional information. I've been privy to having more conversation for this, so I don't want to make light of if anybody wants additional information. But I think you framed it up nicely when you said that we had a portion of the funding of Montana and an exceptional response to it. So from my perspective, it's pretty straightforward, but I don't want to walk all over if somebody else had some additional questions. So I would just query the group if they feel like they need additional information prior to considering the additional funding. Madam Co-Chair, you have a hand up?
I do, and I just have a couple of questions, and I got most of the questions answered in the executive committee meeting. However, some of the board members were not privy to that. So Elena, can you just talk to me a little bit about the dates of the contract? I see where this is done on March 31st of 2024. So are we behind in payment to the CTC, or what is are we paying just by individual analysis of the entities that are applying? Would you just explain that a little bit to me?
You bet. And let me add at this time that thank you, Committee Chair and Mr. Law. The planning dollars that we were awarded through Treasury for this, this is where the funding for this contract is coming from. It is not out of a general fund or Wyoming funds. This is something that was set aside for this. It became kind of a juggle because we closed our map challenge period and had hoped to, and we opened our application. What we had hoped is CTC could work in the downtime when we were collecting the applications, but we ran out of money to pay them for that. So we suspended what they were doing. They had just finished up or just about finished up what we needed to go ahead and proceed with what they did for the map challenge. And so they have not been on board with us for the last couple weeks because we can't do that. We can't pay with something we don't have. So they took a short vacation, I guess. The danger of that is it gets too much longer, then we're really going to start to delay this program. What we might have done, Madam Chair, is we might have made some weekends and nights for them to the future. I don't know that. I don't want to hear it. Whatever they have to do what they need to do. So there was a natural break in this that we took advantage of. And they have this particular CTC has not been working on the application challenges that are coming in at this moment. I would like to introduce David Johnson to you. He is not a presenter, but I wonder if we could make him, in case he wants to add anything that I have glossed over. Is that possible?
Ms. Zempel, David Johnson's already on the line.
Okay. David, please expand.
Sure. Madam Co-Chair, Mr. Committee Chair Law, appreciate the question. I think Elena has answered it accurately that we are not behind in any payments to CTC, as we did suspend some of the work that we were having them do for us, as Elena explained, in the natural break between processes as part of the CPF program.
And so with that, Madam Chair, did you have additional explanation needed?
Yeah, I do. Of course I do. So, and I asked this, but just explain a little bit more. Why do we have so many more than Montana? Because Montana has a lot more population and a lot more. Can you just talk to me just briefly about that?
Sure, Madam Co-Chair. Thank you again for the question. I would say that we're very fortunate, and I would also say that the providers in Wyoming are eager to utilize the federal funding that's made available to us to further build out their broadband networks to serve the citizens of Wyoming. I think this showing is a very positive showing, and what we've learned from the CPF program, we will carry on to the BEAD program. So, with that, I think the majority of the providers that we've spoken throughout the process are again eager to utilize this funding to expand their networks. Is the major cause of that. 116 applications, as Elena said, is probably 3 times as many as we had anticipated. But with the BEAD funding right behind this, which is an additional $348 million, it will set us up well to move right into that program.
And do we have a target of how many entities will be chosen?
Yeah, Ms. Tomasi, again, thank you for the question. I think at this point it would be premature for me to say that. Of the 116 applications, we're reviewing all of those applications. 75, and as it was reported to the board earlier, the providers were asking for nearly $360 million in build out. So with 75 million, again, I would hesitate to give a specific number, but we will certainly approve applications until the funding is run out.
Okay.
And let me add it the same. I'm sorry, Committee Chair. Part of the reason also was timing. Montana was over a year ahead of us, and so there was unknowns in how this program was going to run, and I think that Montana was an early adopter. I think that there was a comfort level that perhaps the Montana providers didn't have that the Wyoming providers have after seeing how those programs worked itself out.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for right now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Any other questions or comments from Elena? Again, my thing is a little bit delayed, so I don't want to jump here. Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Committee Chair, yes. Mr. Law.
Yes.
I do have one quick. So we are spending, and I understand why we're spending it. I really hope that many people I know will benefit from this project. So we're going to spend 345-ish thousand to give out 360,000. I mean, Elena, can you tell me what those two numbers are?
Yes, the 300 and some odd thousand that we're spending in planning is to distribute the $70 to $75 million of capital project funds, or the ARPA funds. This does not have anything, well, I can't say that. We will develop a lot of policy and how we move forward for the BEAD program, but it is not part of the 348 million. So yes, we're leveraging this 300 and help me, 50 some million to spend the 70 to 75 million on CPF. One of the things, and I've said this, Montana, we have learned so much from what Montana did, and so has CTC, because they did some of the work for Montana. I think this is a very it's a good protection for the state of Wyoming, because we are going through and making sure that that 70 to 75 million is spent in the best places that will be with the best chance of being built out how it is dictated in the applications. And that's what we want. We want the most money spent in the best way we can. Again, there's a different the money that we're spending is planning dollars. We're not spending the actual broadband infrastructure dollars here. When we wrote the application for those planning, there were planning dollars that the Treasury set aside just for planning, and I think that with the full distribution, there's 5.55 million set aside for that planning, and we're using a portion of that. Not what we're not taking away from the infrastructure broadband build out. Is that helpful, Ms. Johnson?
Yes, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you for the question, Ms. Johnson. Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Harvey. I think you're on mute, maybe.
Yeah, just trying to figure out which unmute button I can use. So here's my understanding. If I could just condense this into what I've heard, what I've read, we got quite a few more applications of companies that plan to, they do the planning, they map out where these broadband lines will be laid. And so we've heard from so many more people that it's going to require more planning, more drawings, and that's what the money is for. so that we can actually then turn around and use the ARPA money to build. So this is planning, not building. Is that correct?
That is correct. This is planning and verifying funds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, I think it might be appropriate to have a motion, perhaps, on the additional funding requirements as stated in the action item.
So moved, Committee Chair Law.
It's been moved. It's moved by Chuck and Chuck, if I'm not mistaken. So moved and seconded by Chuck and Chuck.
Mr. Committee Chair, I believe it was Mr. Smith who did the first, and then Mr. Brown.
Smith. Sorry about that, Derek. Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, the dollar amount that's going to be in that motion that we'd be voting on is what number?
Let's see here. Could you recite that, Elena, for me? Just or roll it up so I can see. And maybe just we'll state the exact number. You got it?
Yeah,
additional
there it is.
250,000. Okay,
yeah, I see it. Thank you.
Great. You bet. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. I'm hearing none. The motion passes, and we'll put this matter to bed, and I will turn it back to Madam Co-Chair.
Okay, so also on the agenda we're talking about the capital projects funds, which I think we just did. So do we have other things within the services committee that needs to be discussed?
Madam Co-Chair and Mr. Committee Chair, if I may, what we were hoping to do, and Elena's on the line to be able to do this, and we've got a few slides we can share with you, is to give a little bit broader update on the CPF program, just to share a little bit more about the timelines and what we could be expecting over the next 6 to 9 months.
Thank you, Amy. I saw in the in our board's minutes and the discussion papers that we received that there were other things to discuss. So I was hoping that we would go over that. Thank you.
Great. Well, Elena, take it away.
Okay, Connect Wyoming CPF is Capital Project Fund. This Connect Wyoming, if you remember, we did the CARES Act funding for Connect Wyoming 1, and this is the subsequent to particular funding source. This comes out of the Department of Treasury, and to draw a distinction, what Joanne will be talking about in BEAD funding comes through Department of Commerce and the NTIA, and she'll go through this. Treasury is the one who distributed these not leftover. These are an ARPA fund. We had to file a program plan under a grant plan. So there were 4 things in Wyoming that they were looking to fund. One of them was broadband to the tune of, we're still negotiating, about 70 to 75 million. That's what we have to put broadband infrastructure in the ground. We have done a map fabric. We worked with Lightbox to develop that. It was developed using USAC data and the provider's FCC data that they have to submit to the federal government. We had them submit it to our consultant, Lightbox. We used UCLA data, which is speed test data, and Lightbox also went in with GIS data from each of the counties that they could get it from, and from the 4 locations, and from the cities and towns to get that data and to put that fabric together. Then we opened up a map challenge. So we released our map through from Lightbox, and the providers looked and saw where there were locations that were not correct, or they challenged them. We made those corrections to that map that where they needed, and then we assured the providers we had listened in areas where we didn't make that. Once that was closed and we received, that's where CTC came in. We developed an online application, and we released that to credentialed users. Those were those providers who had provided us map data, and now they are submitting applications for that $75 million. That particular application closes on October 5th. That's Friday, right? Yeah, that'll make a nice weekend. So during this time, while we're doing this right now with the application challenges, we have a direct line open, and we're answering any questions, providing additional data if requested to get the application challenges in. We spent a lot of time on the map challenge, hoping that our application challenges would be minimized. I don't know if that's going to happen. We've received heard from 3 providers with their application challenges so far. We may see more than we were bargaining for. We're hoping not. If it is a large application challenge pool, it will delay these dates that you see here. We're hoping the awards will be made in the month of November. They're ending early December, and that we will be able to get the contracts awarded, signed through the Attorney General's office, through all of that is done and negotiated with the providers and the state, so that this matches Wyoming's construction season pretty well. If they know what they have, they can gear up for whenever we can get in the ground, which you guys know can be in March or June or anywhere in between those. But it's a time for them to get equipment, supplies on the ground, and hopefully workforce to get this built out in the summer of 2024. One of the things you can see, we received 100, I'm sorry, go back. We received 116 applications. I think you've seen these numbers before. 400 million in total project costs, 325 million requested. And so that leaves 88 million that they provide in match, and 38,295 locations served. Which is a high number of locations served, which makes us believe we have a fair amount of duplication. And that is what CTC is providing for us, is deduplication between the asks from each provider, but deduplication of prior federal commitments. So we got to stay away from CAF, from Reconnect, from RDOF awards that have already been made. So there's quite a bit of diving into these maps to see where those locations are. And there will be some negotiation with the providers who have come in for the same area. But we're pretty excited to be at this point. This has taken a lot longer than I thought. Next slide. You'll see this quite a bit because we have put the BEAD and the ARPA, our CPF, on this together with Connect Wyoming. You see where we are. The beauty of Connect Wyoming, and I don't know if it was intentional or it just was a happy accident, is we learned so much from the CPF funding. We learned where the providers are not willing to go and where the providers are willing to go. And it will help us in the BEAD figure out what those white spaces are and where there's nobody, and what we need to do to get internet at broadband speeds to those particular locations. This program through the federal government is called Internet for All. And if you will look at FCC's own formula, they thought that building out the state of Wyoming would cost 1.2 to 1.6 billion. And we have 348 million. So, we're going to have to be very, very creative because it's internet for all. And they keep telling us, and well, if you wanted internet for all, you should have given us more money, but it's all gone. So we're not going to get any more than that. So we're going to have to be creative and think of different technologies, different ways to get that access to some. And those different technologies will include fixed wireless and unlicensed fixed wireless. It'll include satellite. So all of those discussions are still going on by CPF, and CPF informed that discussion tremendously. Just really glad we'll see that. And if I keep talking, then Joanne won't have anything to talk about. So I will hold off, answer any CPF specific questions that I might have raised.
Hey.
So, Elena?
Yes.
You might be able to answer. This is a tremendous job. I mean, the scope of this work is huge, but and maybe you can answer this. So for the awards for the providers, is it based on their past quality of work? Is it based on their current quality of work? Is it based on the size of the coverage they can give? Is it based on their estimates? I just kind of want an overview of how this is being judged, I guess is the word.
Yeah, and that's a good word for that. Thank you. You'll always be Kathy. I'm sorry, I don't, the protocols I struggle with.
Exactly, yeah.
So we developed a scoring matrix, and the answer to your question is yes. It's based upon their match. It's based upon the number of unserved, number of underserved. It's based upon their past success with other programs. The scoring matrix, David Johnson developed that and put that together. It calls into if I would say 30 points, 30 different fact points that are weighted and measured in there. Yeah, it isn't one thing. They're across the board to get the best companies and to get the Wyoming citizenry the best that we can get there. So I can share with the scoring matrix. I'm going to take a break. And David, do you want to add what the areas that these companies were measured on better than I can right now?
Sure, Elena. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, for the question. There were really three sections to the scoring matrix that was developed. The first one was we called Connecting Wyoming, which had a point total of 35, which was based on a couple of different things. The total living units and business units and community anchor institutions that were being served by the project were the main factors of that. The second one was really 35 points based on the technology that the applicant was putting forward. As you can imagine, as we've been talking through the program, those that presented a fiber to the home or fiber to the business type of technology were scored much higher than those that were proposing some other technology than that, because we really feel that fiber is a future-proof technology. So those were scored much higher. And then lastly, really about the administrative piece. So Elena talked about some of those things. Primarily, they were heavily weighted based on the amount of financial match that the applicant put into the project. And then some other factors, do they have existing right-of-ways? Do they hold permits? Do they have the infrastructure in place to connect these folks to the internet from a middle mile perspective back to the internet connection point? So administrative, type of project, and then of course the number of locations that were served were the primary drivers for the scoring. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answered a lot. And I think Mark, I think Chuck has a question too. So
yes, please go ahead, Chuck. Chuck, I think you're still muted.
So sorry, I was trying to get on to leave a message that I need to depart here. So thank you all, and we'll talk with you soon.
All right, thanks, Chuck. Have a good day.
You bet. Bye.
And Chairman Law, I just have one last thing to add, was on the future-proof. We future-proof of the technology. The federal funding agencies, in this case Treasury and Department of Commerce, had determined that fiber in the ground was the best future-proof and the best enduring. It didn't suffer from the elements quite as bad. So we stayed in line with our funding agencies, and also we made fiber our priority. If you'll do some reading, I know satellite was really something we discussed, but given what the feds were able to come up with, we did want to stay in line with what they were recommending, and that's why we prioritized fiber technology.
Thank you, Elena, for answering that question. Ms. Harvey, you have a question?
I do. I'm looking at the display, and it says 38,000 locations served, and that locations may be duplicated within multiple applications. And so, is this going to allow for competition to keep prices lower, or is this going to be able to replace copper with fiber optics? I mean, I like fiber optics. I think it is the best. We have fairly decent internet in our area, but we're all copper. So what does the duplication in multiple applications refer to? And competition is important, I think. Could you address that, please?
Yeah, competition isn't a bad word, right? It's better for the customer base, I think, but been in economic development for a while, so maybe I'm a little bit skewed. But yes, so if company A comes in and they take up a portion of Casper, and company B comes in and they take up their application is for another portion of Casper, and then they happen to cross over down Walcott Street or something like that, that would we need to go in and see where they're duplicating in that particular area, where some of the addresses that they want to fund are the same. And that's the part where we will be doing some negotiating. The carrier who point scored higher will be giving preference, or that's where we'll start and see how well we do. I'm really encouraged by Wyoming providers because they are pretty cognizant of each other's areas and they don't do that, but competition is a good thing. It is really a good thing. And so we will look at those on an individual basis. That's what we mean by the deduplication of applications that are coming in for those same locations. But there's also a deduplication to make sure that existing federal commitments do not exist. So if a provider has a CAF2, a Connect America Fund grant from the federal government to build out, and it's not built out yet, but they guaranteed 100/20 or 100 symmetrical, that takes it off the board. And we need to go through and we need to check all of those federal programs that were offered in the past. We need to check their speeds, and we really need to check when they're going to get those things done, because as we go through and to build out in the best places that we can. I think that answered your question, I hope, Ms. Harvey.
Thanks, Elena. Is there any other questions from anyone? Okay, Elena, do you have some more material then? Or?
Yes, we do. We have the BEAD program, and I'd like to introduce you to Joanne Hovis. She has been, she's principal with CTC and has been a great advocate for Wyoming and talks a lot better than I do. And I use her an awful lot for that. She will be talking about the BEAD program. This is a huge program. It makes CPF look small, and I know how much work CPF does. I think you will profit greatly by her explanation. It'll give you hooks to hang your thoughts on all the way through it. So with that, Joanne, please take over for me, and I'll hit mute. Yay.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity to speak with all of you today and to talk about the BEAD program, which really is a very important and hopefully will be a dramatically impactful program for advancing broadband throughout Wyoming. I will speak quickly to some of the content that is here, and you will see much of this in coming months as well as detail is further released. But briefly, the good news about BEAD, which is the broadband infrastructure program that was funded through the bipartisan infrastructure law, is that when the allocations were released in late June, the federal government had allocated $348 million based on the allocation formula that Congress created for Wyoming. As Ms. Zempel noted, we know that the scale of the challenge is considerably greater than the available funding, even with hundreds of millions of dollars available. So the effort underway in the current moment is to develop strategy and plans and to work collaboratively with ISPs and communities to try to make sure that these funds can be used in the most impactful possible way and that they can be stretched to go as far as possible. We are under some considerable federal constraints with regard to how we can use these funds. This, by the way, might be a partial answer to why there were so many applications for the Capital Projects Fund, is that the BEAD funds coming up right behind capital projects are much more restricted than capital projects. And I think Wyoming ISPs were trying to get out ahead of the less restrictive program to be part of it. But we take it as a great sign that there will be lots of participation in BEAD as well. But I think the most important thing to note about BEAD is that under federal guidelines, the top priority has to be for unserved locations, that is, locations that cannot access 25 by 3 megabits per second. And the second priority for these BEAD funds are for underserved locations, those that are between 25 by 3 and 100 by 20. anything that already has service of 100 by 20 or above is not eligible for BEAD funding if it is a residential or a business location. And to try to address the many questions the federal government has for the states and how the states plan to give out these funds, there is a multi-part planning cycle and series of plans that have to be submitted to the federal government. The first one is what's called the 5-year action plan, which is a high-level strategy document. And then the second, and very consequential, is the initial proposal. And this is the more lengthy and very data-driven document that describes in considerable detail how the Wyoming Broadband Office will distribute the $348 million. And that is the work that is underway right now. Could I ask for the next slide, please? So you see the timeline here and the efforts that are underway as part of this. There's an awful lot of information on this slide, but just to kind of orient us all around the same set of items, I should note up at the top under BEAD planning, we have that 5-year action plan that has been submitted, the initial proposal, 2 volumes of the initial proposal. This is quite a lot of federal activity or required state activity for the federal government, as you can see, that will be submitted in coming weeks. And then all of that, subject to approval by the federal government, will then lead to a challenge process, and following that, an award process on a provisional basis that will then, once it is approved in its final form by the federal government, will lead to funds actually flowing to Wyoming internet service providers, catching the construction season of 2025. So this year's effort, multiple plans, all either submitted or underway. Next year's effort, a challenge process to allow communities and nonprofits and ISPs to help us get the map as accurate as possible, then leading to a grant program on a provisional basis. And then 2025, the actual beginning of deployment, what is anticipated to be a 4-year deployment cycle. At the same time, Connect Wyoming 2, the Capital Projects Fund grants that Ms. Empel was talking about just a few minutes ago, that grant effort underway right now with construction starting next year, catching next year's construction season. So all of this targeted and planned within the constraints of federal processes and federal timelines to maximize from the standpoint of construction season, resources, planning efforts, and grant review efforts. The last piece I think already mentioned also is what's called the Digital Access Program, and that is that third category there. A digital access plan has been developed based again on federal requirements to unlock federal funds. All of these plans have to be written, and the Digital Access Plan, once it is approved by the federal government, will then create opportunity for the Broadband Office to submit an application and receive digital access funds, or what are called digital equity capacity grants in the language of the bipartisan infrastructure law. We do not yet know how much that amount will be. The allocations have not yet been announced, but this will be an opportunity to potentially fund programs that help folks who are not able to use the internet because of various kinds of barriers to do so, thus enabling them to benefit from the broadband internet and enabling the ISPs that can serve them to benefit from being their service providers and bring more Wyomingites online onto the networks in what is truly a virtuous circle. That's an overview of what the next couple of years look like, and the overall timeline and efforts. And I think I will just share a couple more quick notes, and then I'll ask Ms. Zempel if there's anything else she would like me to address. But I would say that the most important thing to know about the current moment is that these multiple efforts really come down to this core set of strategic questions of how can $300 something million be made to achieve as much as possible? How can a process be designed and a strategy developed to maximize the benefits of competition, maximize the number of ISPs that are interested in collaborating with the state to improve broadband throughout Wyoming, and to hopefully get to the best possible result. That is what the initial proposal is about, and it will be put out for public comment in very short order, with opportunity to share considerable or to share comments and thoughts on the topic coming relatively soon. This is the most extraordinary challenge that I have encountered in my career as a public broadband planner, working for states and localities and tribal governments since 1997 at the advent of the commercial internet. This extraordinary opportunity is in front of us with federal funds in the amount of hundreds of millions of dollars, but still not enough to address every challenge and every concern and to satisfy every potential stakeholder. So the very important work of the next few months and the next couple of years is ahead based on the plans developed for that initial proposal in consultation with a wide range of different stakeholders, many of whom I've had the pleasure of meeting with myself while in Wyoming. And hopefully that initial proposal will serve us in good stead to maximize the benefit of these dollars. I will pause there and see if there's anything Elena would like me to add.
I'm not sure, Joanne, that I want you to add, but I want the board to know that we had a very good meeting with the legislators. An invitation went out to them. We had a number of them sign up and a number of them not show up, but we made a recording of that and have distributed it. We're going to have to go forward and talk about match and talk about line of credit. Both of those are required by the BEAD program, and that makes it very challenging for some of the providers in this. So the state of Wyoming is talking about if and what they want to do or participate in to make sure that that they don't the rules that are set forth by the NTIA don't preclude some of our providers from meeting those, having the ability to meet broadband internet in the state. So no, Joanne, there wasn't anything I wanted you to talk about. Have at her. Joanne did that presentation magnificently for us last week, and I really dodged a bullet. Thanks, Joanne.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Elena. Any other material, Brandon, Elena?
I do not.
Yeah, Mr. Committee Chairman, I think if we are finished with presentations and no further questions, we are complete.
I just want to say that I think that this presentation has cleared up a lot of my questions that I had. And I think the program timeline is so beneficial for all the board members so that we kind of have a grasp of what is happening and how it's happening. I appreciate it so much. Thank you, all of you that participated. So Mark, I think you're cutting out. And here we are talking about broadband. It's just providence that happened. Okay, so Elena, do you have anything else you want to add? Does anybody have anything else they would like to add to the board meeting?
I do not have anything, Madam Chair.
Okay, so hearing nothing else, I just want to send out a few reminders. The next meeting of SLIB is October the 5th, and it should be pretty interesting to listen to. The standing committees are on the agenda. You'll see what dates and times are planned, and we'll see if I think that they usually end up on those dates. Our next regular meeting of the board will be December 12th and 13th, and it will be a virtual meeting. So everybody, thank you so much for coming. Do I hear a motion? Anything else? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Second then.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Okay, thank you all for participating. Again, I think that the presentation gave a lot of information. Thank you so much. See you next board meeting. Thanks.
Thank you all.